that should it happen. Now let's bring in Canberra, Grahame Morris, and from Sydney, Bruce Hawker. Welcome to you both, our regular political strategists. I want to just start on the Royal Commission announcement. Bruce Hawker, I'll start with you firstly. We know Bill Shorten has argued against the Royal Commission. He wants a special police task force. But when you've now looked at what's been announced from the Prime Minister, what do you think on this? Is it worth Labor backing this?
I think the argument for anything other than a Royal Commission is sort of academic now. Government's made a decision that they're going to have this Royal Commission, and I think it's now time for Labor just to make sure that they hold it accountable as much as they possibly can to do a fair inquiry, and that the government doesn't politicise this beyond where it's being politicised now. Clearly, the motivation for this in the government is to try to create as much embarrassment to the Labor Party, Bill Shorten, as they possibly can.
But couldn't the motive also be to try and tackle some of the problems that we've seen very well publicised in recent weeks, in particular corruption, kickbacks, violence, intimidation in the building industry? That's a motive for a government to do something.
Well, they should do that, and I think the Royal Commission's clearly going to be looking at all those things. So I think the arguments about alternative forms of inquiry and investigation are really academic now. It's up to the inquiry to conduct itself entirely appropriately. I think there are always going to be two sides to this story, and we're going to see a lot of people on the business side dragged before the inquiry as well.
Grahame, let me just get your thoughts on this. Yes, there will be a political benefit to the government of this, but clearly the motivation is to tackle the problems that we've seen in the CFMEU, the Health Services Union, and elsewhere. This is going to run for a while, though, isn't it? And the thing with the Royal Commission is you never know quite where it's going to end up.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. But look, in Australia, the trade union movement is in danger of becoming a sect that is harbouring crims, crooks, thugs, that are running corrupt organisations. You know, you think, a decent unionist out there, how do they know that their union dues are not being skimmed off the top by some mug, as we've seen, you know, in a lot of examples? And, you know, it's almost got to the stage where a trade union member is sort of better off pulling his dues out of the union and going to take a lottery ticket. At least there's some hope of some good coming out of that. But look, I actually hope that the Royal Commissioner does consider having some of his hearings in camera. You know, I know from very, very big companies, some of them, the standover tactics that they cop is disgraceful.
You think witnesses will be too scared to give public evidence?
I do, David. I think there's a lot of small business people who are being stood over. There's a lot of very good union people who have something to say. But, you know, if you want to stand up to people who will physically threaten your family, threaten you, threaten your business, threaten all your clients, you know, that takes a very, very brave person. And I hope the Royal Commissioner makes it clear that we want good people to come forward and that they will be protected.
Bruce, just a final thought on this issue from you. What are the political risks here for Bill Shorten? You say that it's academic, what sort of inquiry, but the government can now rightly say he didn't want this Royal Commission. He tried to stop this Royal Commission. Now look what it's uncovered. There are risks here for him on that front, and then also whatever else it uncovers about the union movement to which he's so closely associated.
Well, clearly when you have a Royal Commission that's been set up for partisan purposes, you are going to run a risk that it's going to go down a certain path. And as Malcolm Farr pointed out in that interview with the Prime Minister, or the press conference with the Prime Minister just a few minutes ago, some of the allegations regarding Julia Gillard go back 25 years. So they're really going to go back that far. And that'll be a test, I think, of how partisan or otherwise it is. The other point I'd make about this, by the way, is that sometimes you should be careful about what you wish for. I'm old enough to remember the Costigan Royal Commission being established in the early 1980s to look into the Painters and Dockers Union, and they did find criminality there for sure. They also found widespread crimes of tax evasion by leading business figures in Australia too, and more businessmen went down as a result of the Costigan Royal Commission than union officials. So it'll be interesting to see where this inquiry goes. I think Labor should be as cooperative as it can be with the inquiry. I think it's an inquiry that was always going to happen. The government, when it was in opposition, made it clear it was going to go down this path. It wants to attack the unions, it wants to attack the relationship between unions and Labor, and they've found some very good ways of doing that in recent days to create a cover, a justification.
We've got to take a break. Then I'm going to look at the Griffith by-election. We'll bring you the latest because the counting's continued there today and the gap has. Welcome back to PM Agenda. We're talking to political strategist Grahame Morris and Bruce Hawker. Just before we move on to the Griffith by-election, Grahame, we were just discussing prior to the break what the political risks are for Bill Shorten with this Royal Commission that's been announced. How serious do you think they are?
Well, he's got himself in a very awkward position. You know, he can't rat on or bucket the trade union leaders because he was one and they pay for his commercials. But he can't live with them because they're dragging down the Labor Party and giving the party a bad name. Look, at some stage, the Labor Party is going to have a leader, maybe it's Bill Shorten, maybe it's not, who gives the party an enema and it purges the trade union movement. You know, what happens if this Royal Commissioner, by the end of the year, finds real corruption? Is Bill Shorten simply going to say, oh, well, you know, that's the trade union movement? Well, he can't.
All right. Let's move on to the Griffith by-election. In fact, let's look at the latest results there, if we can bring that up, because the counting resumed today. There were around 10,000 postal votes. They're not counted on the night. We know things wound up close on Saturday night. Let's see how close they are now, because things have tightened a little. You can see there the gap after preferences has now come into pretty much 52-48. Grahame Morris, it's not going to be enough for Bill Shorten still to close that gap, but the swing since the September election against Labor now looks like being almost 1%.
This is Middle Australia. You know, I know this part of Brisbane, and I also know by-elections, and it doesn't matter whether it's Wannon, Corangamite, Bruce, Port Adelaide, Moreton, all of those by-elections, there was a swing against the government. In this one, there's a swing to the government. Now, you know, Bill Shorten is a very lucky man. A few hundred votes going the other way, he would have created history and been the first opposition leader in 90 years to lose a seat.
That's true. There are factors here, though. Last time was a sitting Prime Minister running for Labor. This time...
In all of mine, there were senior ministers, Malcolm Fraser, all of those, and there were still swings against the government. You know, I got a better result than sort of the Malcolm Frasers and the ministers.
Yeah, Bruce, is this really a good result for Labor given all that?
Well, winners are grinners, David, and Labor won this by-election despite the presence of an extremely popular Liberal Party candidate, much more popular, I might say, than the Prime Minister in the electorate. Bill Glasson had a positive rating that we measured, I think, of about +14, whereas, +24, but the Prime Minister had a -15 or 16 rating from memory. So you've got to put that into context at the very beginning. This was very much an election that was based around the personalities who are running for the seat. Secondly, and this is very important, the seat of Griffith is no longer typically Middle Australia. I lived in Griffith when it was Middle Australia, and Grahame might have visited back when it was Middle Australia. Today, it is in the top 20 electorates by household income in the country. And just to give you...
But why has it shifted in the last 5 months? The demographics haven't changed since September.
Well, we've had a Prime Minister who was there before and is no longer there, and he had a very strong personal support. I mean, and he held the swings in Griffith right back in a way that you would not expect it to be. Now, just let me make this point. In the seat, if you look at the seat of Tangi, the seat of Mitchell, which is right beside the seat of Griffith in terms of its in terms of household income. It has a Liberal majority of 18.8%. The seat of Mitchell.
Bruce.
No, hang on. So this is the sort of seat that you're talking about now. It is right up there. The seat of Mitchell. The seat of Mitchell, which has got the same household income as Griffith, is the third safest coalition seat in the country. That's what we're talking about here. Let's put that clearly into perspective.
The Labor Party has lost 1 in 10 of its votes in the last 7 years in this seat. Yes, there's been a change, but not the sort of demographic change you're talking about. Okay. You know, there's about 12 Green families, a couple of gay families, and Kevin Rudd have moved in. That's the difference.
All right.
And the message was send a message to Canberra, and Labor, if you transpose this, would have lost another 4.
It is in the top 20 seats in the country. And now you can't get over that fact. It's in the top 20 seats in terms of household income in the country.
Okay, lots of facts and statistics on this. Let me just finish, because we've only got a minute or so left. News you're seeing on the bottom of your screen there, that the unions are now telling us that Toyota is about to announce that it's ceasing production from 2017. I do want to get your thoughts on that. In a sense, it's no huge surprise, Grahame Morris, is it, after Holden and Ford, the last one standing, Toyota, to go? But gee, it's sad news.
No, it is just dreadful. But it is another example that one man's pay rise, one man's sort of extra benefit is another man's job. And just dreadful, dreadful for the automotive industry.
Could this, Bruce, give Bill Shorten a bit of ammunition heading into Parliament, which resumes tomorrow? We know Labor has accused Tony Abbott and Joe Hockey of being the ones that have destroyed the car industry, I think somewhat unfairly, laying it all on their lap, but does it give Bill Shorten at least some ammunition?
It does indeed, and this is a government which is refusing to extend proper assistance to the car industry, and yet it will spend $22.5 billion over the next 4 years on a paid parental leave scheme which will favour women on $150,000 per annum. All the wrong priorities being demonstrated by this government when it comes to looking after the people and the industries that should be looked after.
Okay, look, we're going to wrap it up there. Bruce Hawker, Grahame Morris, good to talk to you this afternoon. Lots of news, as we've heard, they're happening this afternoon. We'll take a break. We'll bring you more on Toyota. It's set to announce an end to production in Australia, the end of the car sector altogether in Australia. Of course, the latest on Schapelle Corby, the Royal Commission that's been announced as well. Don't go away.